All right, guys, Fishing California with EBA here, and we're going to talk today about Union Valley Reservoir. We're going to break this fishery down. We're going to tell you fundamentals. We're going to give you great information. It's going to put you on more fish, bigger fish, and consistently just do better every time you're out there. Union Valley Reservoir is located in the Dorado Mountains of California. If you go up Highway 50 long enough, you're going to exit on Ice House Road. You're going to keep going and you'll find it. Now, there's a variety of lakes up here. There's a collective, and they all are nestled within the El Dorado Mountains. There's also other lakes and rivers, creeks, streams, etc., reservoirs, bodies of water, all within this, kind of just scattered. And we're going to talk today about Union Valley. It's a larger fishery, one of the bigger lakes in the state. It's not the biggest, but it's a good size reservoir lake, body of water. It's a really good size, and it's deep. It's really deep. So when it's full, you're looking at 260 plus feet deep at the deepest area in the lake. So it's deep, it's big, it's extremely rocky. So if you guys get out there and the terrain, you're expecting something easily accessible, that's not going to be what you get. You might be able to play peekaboo here and there, find a couple areas to make a cast at one particular or two particular angles, and that's it. It's pop in, pop out, very difficult bank access. There are going to be some exceptions. However, those exceptions, those areas that are easier for shoreline access, are generally not good fishing spots. So let's break down this fishery. Let's break down this lake, this reservoir, and let's talk about it. We're going to talk about bass fishing today specifically, but we're also going to dabble in some of the trout, some of the mackinaw, some wild fish that also reside in this lake. So let's just break it down. This particular fishery has a lot of water, a lot of creeks feeding into it half the year, okay? And the other half, it still has creeks and bodies of water feeding into it, but much less water feeding into it. So it's more of a trickle than a main flow. It's, instead of a raging creek or a raging river, it's just got a trickling creek or a trickling river that's feeding the lake. So right now, we're going to talk about smallmouth bass because that's what's fundamentally in this fishery. They don't have largemouth and they don't have spotted bass. They have smallmouth bass. And the smallmouth bass there, they tend to do pretty well. They thrive and they populate, at least they have populated it quite effectively. You go out there and catching numbers is the norm. So going out there and busting out a couple smallmouth is pretty easy to do. What's more difficult is to get on consistency, so being able to go out there time and time again and catch numbers, and then being able to upsize those fish to the different level, the bigger class fish, if you will. So upsizing those fish and consistently getting on numbers is going to be the game. That's the goal of this video, to do that for you guys, get you guys to do that. So first thing is, they absolutely love leeches. So if you guys have plastic leeches in the 2, 3, 4-inch class, anything that looks like a very simple, small worms, really small, 3, 4 inches, things of that nature, they tend to do well. You can drop shot them, you can jig, throw them on a jig head and work them on the bottom. You can pop them during certain times of year to create reactions, especially when there's fish in the area, and it works. But here's the key: natural colors. It has to be natural, okay, or it's not going to work. Second thing, really productive at that lake, we're talking baits right now, we're just throwing some baits out there, is a fly, a floating fly, any type of a fly, any type of an insect, an aquatic insect, a larva, anything that you see hatching relative to that area. Find something in your box that looks like that hatch and throw it on a float. And you'd be surprised, especially certain times of the year, especially summer and fall, they do suspend, they do like sit within the under that water column and subsurface a lot of times, and you can have a really good day just with basic insect, like we said, aquatic insects, centipede type imitation baits, larva hoppers, you know, ants, flying ants, you just name it. I mean, butterflies, dragonflies, you name it. You imitate something like that, you're gonna get bit. That's what's running around up there. That's flying around. That's hitting the water. So copycat that, you're gonna get on fish. You know, playing around with how far that bait is going to be under that bobber. You know, start at 12 inches and stop at 9 feet. It's a very, very broad spectrum of, you know, the water column. They're very sensitive, so they might be hanging up on the upper 3 feet under the subsurface, 3 feet in the evening and in the morning. And then as the warmer temperatures and those warmer days in the summer and fall come through, they're going to go a little bit deeper. That's why you're going to have to sometimes go 5, 7, even 9 feet down with that leader. It's going to be very effective. You're going to thank me later. So let's go ahead and let's brush on some other techniques that everybody is more familiar with that really work well. So jerk baits. If you got a jerk bait, it works phenomenal at this lake. Natural colors, once again, don't get too fancy on them. Smaller jerk baits, it's going to be better. A lot of these fish, they're keying in on a smaller profile forage food. So whatever they're eating, their forage, their food, their bait fish, whatever they're eating, it's generally smaller, and you need to downsize your jerk baits. Now you want to use hard plastics, you want to use soft plastic jerk baits, it doesn't matter. Being in the right water column, in the right area with structure, wherever these fish are holding, there's a couple different reasons we'll talk about. That's more important than anything. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is going to be top water. I mean, if you like walk the dog, you like a popper style bait, you like spit in water, these fish absolutely love it. They're schooled up a lot, and a lot of these schools are juveniles or just starting to get to of age, and they will compete like crazy to get the same bait. You might get 3-4 blow-ups from 3-4 different fish on a single cast. Lots of fun. Only downside to that top water game is the size of the fish does tend to be smaller, and it's not just at this lake, it's in general. Top water fish are smaller. We could talk about frogs, the Delta, Clear Lake, and we could talk about the exception of the rule, but 99% of the fish across the world, across the board, they tend to be smaller statistically. That's what the statistics say on top water. So go out there and, you know, you might be able to get 30, 40, 50 blow-ups in 2 or 3 hours. You might be able to land 10, 12, 15 fish. They might not be quite the size, but that's a lot of fun. It's a lot of action. And then, of course, you're going to get those bigger fish to commit on low light conditions, on a little bit of variables in the weather. So if you got consistent, whatnot, sunny weather, and you've got a storm that kind of pulls through in that area, which they do quite often. You got these rainstorms, you got thunderstorms, and you got just sheer downpours that'll pop up in the middle of the summer, even the fall, even the spring, and of course in the winter. But these little moments actually trigger these fish to get active. So if there's a steady condition and all of a sudden you've got something moving in that's completely a different situation, environmentally, weather-wise, you're going to get certain fish that are going to move from wherever they're at, and they're going to feed. They're going to feed hard for a few days, and they're going to go right back to where they were. So let's talk about some other baits. We can talk about, you know, Z-Man, small plastic. Z-Man makes a lot of small plastics and they float. It's a bit of a different buoyancy to those baits, and they move a little bit different. They're stiffer and they're this and they're that, but they get bit. They get bit there. So Z-Man plastics, elastics, whatever you want to call them, those get bit there. And, you know, I love a tube. Who doesn't love a tube? But we're in rocky country. We're in rocky terrain. So a jig absolutely will work. A jig and a pig, 1/4 ounce, 3/8 ounce, don't go anything bigger. You can even go downsize from that and go to 1/8 or 1/16, but go to a jig and a pig, go to a hair jig, go to something ultra finesse. Once again, you're focusing on your natural colors relative to that area, looking at hatches, looking at what's going on, paying attention. Lift up the rocks, dig in the mud, do some things, play in the grass, figure out what the heck is going on around here, and find something in your box that's going to imitate that. A lot of times, if the fish are there and you've got the right presentation, the right bait, you throw it out and bam, 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 you should have a fish on quick. These fish, they're small, they're competitive, and they need to feed. Like I said, there's a lot of them. So when something hits the water, they're definitely in competition with each other, and that competition just creates an epic bite. So let's talk a couple more baits. I just want to talk a couple more baits, and that's going to be, your standard, spoon fishing is always good at that lake for whatever reason, any time of the year. Trolling can be very effective on that lake, especially if you're in the right water column. Generally that's going to be mid-water column or on the bottom. So suspended fish in the summer and the fall, and you're going to have fish on the bottom in the winter and the spring. It's very simple for the most part. That's the way the fish relate, and I'm not just talking the bass, I'm talking everything. So there is a healthy population of bass. My best day there was 34 smallmouth. Keep in mind, I've got some physical disabilities, and for me to be able to get 34 fish with those disabilities, you guys have the potential to go out there and bust out 40, 50 bucks. That's a lot of fish, guys. And one of the things is they're not too picky, as long as it's relatively, like I said, the right size profile, it's a natural color, and you present it the right way, you're going to be on the money. What we need to talk about now is structure. We need to talk more about structure. We need to talk about relation, these fish to the structure, and a lot of other important factors. So where's the deepest part of the lake? Okay, I know where it is. No, it's basically near the dam, over in that area, past the dam, on that south end of the lake, the lower half. That's the deepest part of the lake, right where Sunset Peninsula and the point from that area and the dam, right in the center of all that is the deepest area. And you have to understand that a lot of the bigger fish that relate in deeper water, when they do come out, they're not going to go too much, like they're going to definitely go to shallower water if they're in 200 feet, say, but definitely just drawing a circle around that area and saying, okay, this is the gut. This is the gut of the fishery. This is where the biggest, baddest fish are living, and they're in one of the more difficult areas to get to. But there are a few times in the year when those fish will move up from that highway, and they'll get on a slow tapering point, or they'll get on a rock pile or an island or any kind of feature, if you will, riprap, something that they feel safe on. Maybe they climb, like we said, a steep tapering point, a very, very steep point, and they get to a ledge, and the ledge has riprap, and they hang out right there. There's a lot of variety of factors that come into play. We got, where's the water coming in? Where's the water coming out? Where's the deepest areas of the lake? What points and what structure is closest to that area of the lake? Main Lake seems to fish a lot better in the colder months of the year, and the shallower areas of the lake seem to do better during those warmer times of the year. And then, of course, when you get the extreme cold and the extreme warm days, the bites get really tough. If it's consistently 100 degrees out every day or 30 degrees out, whatever it is, that bite's going to be rough. It doesn't mean that there aren't fish to catch. It just means it's going to be a rougher bite because the conditions are steady, and these fish are kind of lethargic. When you get in those extreme temperatures, they tend to not move as much or feed as much. Now, everything we've talked about is going to be important. All those things that you need to think about when you're on the lake. Like, does it have this? Does it have that? Does it have enough structure? So let me give you an example. Let's say you got a slow tapering point, a secondary point, you've got a main lake point, you've got isolated structure, you've got offshore structure, you've got a channel, you've got a cuddy, you've got an island top, and you've got a riprap area with a bunch of ledges. Okay, if you can just find a few of those things together in an area all together, just a couple, the more of that you can find in the same area, the more fish it's going to hold. Obvious reasons. And a lot of the time, this is an interesting lake because where you find the smallmouth, you're going to find the rainbow trout. You're going to find the rainbows where you're going to find the smallmouth. So you'll catch a lot of rainbows. There are a healthy population of browns in that fishery, but they tend to stay deep on the bottom and they're very difficult to catch. If you want to catch a German brown, I'm talking trophy German brown or a trophy rainbow, that's a wild or native fish, you're going to really have to focus on very natural, very subtle baits, very basic, but at the same time, understand what they're doing. And so, for example, a fly, you can long line that fly at 100 feet and just creep crawl 80, 90, 100 feet, creep crawl all around that lake, man. And you can go at a particular speed and troll. You could do a controlled drift. You could do a countdown method, and you could even just drag it. But in reality, that's going to be your best bet for that big fish, that big wild fish. A lot of flies, a lot of old school spoons, a lot of things of that nature are going to do good. Stick baits, big huskies, big rapalas, big sticks. It's going to get you the big fish. Mackinaw. Let's talk Mackinaw at this lake, because the lake trout Mackinaw is a completely different breed. And they just love that deep water, and they love those miserable, windy, wet, snowy, freezing days. They love it. So if you're out there and it's not, well, I just said, if it's not miserable, those fish are more difficult to catch, period. You know, you get under the conditions we just referred to, and those Macs, they come out, they play. It's time for them to come out and play, and they play hard. They're very aggressive. When they are aggressive, they are beyond. I mean, they just will do things that will blow your mind. Contradicting everything that all these Mackinaw guys say, and, you know, it's blatantly obvious. But when there's snow on the ground, that's a good time to go fish for Macs. If it's snowing currently, that's a good time to go fish for Macs. It's also a good time to get icy road conditions, get into a crash, or get to a closure in the road. But that's where the Macs really come out and play. And, you know, you could go ahead and you could troll for them. There's some guys I know in the summer, they're down 150, 200 feet. And they're trolling, they're spooning, and they're catching a Mac here and there, and they're doing okay, but it's nothing impressive to me. I mean, I know what the potential holds and when the potential is the greatest, and they're just not, you know, they want to go out when it's comfortable, they want to drink a beer, nice sunny weather. Okay, that's great. Well, if you want to go out and catch a trophy Mac, you need to get out there and you need to be freezing your balls off. Now, you really need to freeze. If you're not freezing, it's not a great time to go catch a giant Mac. It doesn't mean it can't happen. It means that your odds are diminished to the point where you might as well focus on what's actually popping right now. So when you go up there for Mackinaw lake trout and you're trying to catch them, first of all, don't get too caught up on this is what lake trout like and this is what they don't like. I'm going to tell you right now, if it's cold water, if it's freezing, they're aggressive. And they will eat a crawdad. They will eat a jig and a pig. I've caught them on jerk baits. I've caught them on drop shot. I've caught them on bottom contact baits. I've caught them on night crawlers. Caught them on spinners. Caught them on inline spinners, spinner baits, jerk baits. Did I say jerk baits? Almost every bait. I feel like they will take. It just, can you present it where they're at? Where are they at? Is it that time of year? We're talking about cold water, cold temperatures, cold air, the coldest time of the year. That's when those macs will literally attack anything, if you want to know the truth. And you can find them as shallow as 4 feet. Okay? So shallow as 4 feet, and the rest of the year, it might be at 140 feet plus. Same fish in the right conditions might go as shallow as 4 feet. I've actually caught a 7-pounder in 4 feet of water. So this isn't me saying, hey, it's possible. I'm telling you, it's been done, not just by me, but by people before me. I don't know who they were, and it will be done by people after me. Hopefully right now you guys are putting a couple things together and getting a trip ready, or you're on your way to go up there and you're saying, what can we do? Well, you can say, let's cut the lake into a third, or let's cut it into halves. Let's just cut it in half, right? There's the upper half and the lower half of that lake. And if you focus on the lower half, it does seem like the south side of the lake is more productive. And if you focus on the upper half, it seems like the northern area of the lake, that northern area, region on a map, would be more productive consistently. But there are these variables, like we talked about, these variables that come into play where there might be a variety of different reasons: structure, water coming in. It might be close to the channel, so there might be an area in the channel that a fish lives. It's its residential home. And under certain temperatures or certain times, maybe nighttime, for example, that fish might venture through that, from that channel through and up the water column a bit. And then by the time, you know, you guys are waking up and having breakfast, that fish is already going back into the channel. It's already going back into that depth where it's very difficult to catch them. So fishing at nighttime, you're not technically supposed to do it. You're not technically not supposed to do it. It's kind of like nobody's up there to enforce it, and I don't think anybody cares. But get up there at nighttime and try some of the techniques that weren't working in the daytime, and that might be the simple fix. At the same time, you might need to find the coolest, the coldest water in the lake. Vice versa, it might be really cold and you're looking for the warmest water in the lake, okay? So if it's really cold out and it's consistently cold, look for the warmer water. If it's really, really hot and there's warm water everywhere, look for the coldest water, okay? And that's why water column is so important. Sometimes they'll suspend, especially bass and trout, because that water temp, the oxygen at the water column that they're in, it's perfect. That's what they want. And that's why the suspension of those fish changes as the water returns over from cold to warm and back from warm to cold, and they change the way they suspend, because the column of the water is going to, you know, the temperature in that column is changing every day, and every day the oxygen levels are either dropping in that column or increasing. And this is the reason they're there. Obviously, they're there for, you know, they position themselves in areas where there's food that's going to come by as well, so they don't have to constantly chase. But having said all that, guys, don't be afraid to use a technique or a tactic that's not traditionally for bass. That might be a trout technique for a bass. Vice versa, don't be afraid to try something that's a bass bait for a trout. This is one of those lakes where it seems like they're not sure, or they get confused, or in general, they're eating the same food. They have the same forage and the same type of things they're eating. So if you're throwing something and you're catching a smallmouth, you can bet that you're gonna eventually catch a rainbow trout on that same bait. The trout and the bass, they're keying in on the same things. And that's why in this video, we're able to focus so much on not just the smallmouth, but the fishery and the forage and what size bait are you throwing. That's so important. The colors being natural, that's so important. So the profile, the colors, and of course, the technique. And of course, all this has to then be applied into the right areas. So you need to target the right areas. And let's just say if you're looking at an area and you're saying, man, it looks like I might lose my jig. It looks like I might snag up. I'm going to get in rock. I'm going to get in this, and I'm going to lose my bait. You got a good chance of catching fish there too. So you might lose an extra bait here and there, but you're going to catch an extra fish here and there. You're going to get extra bite here and there, and you're going to have higher percentage of hooking up every single cast. So look for that rip wrap. Look for the rip and the wrap. Look for the log, the lay down, the timber, the structure that's really gnarly. Cast in there. See what happens. As far as this lake, guys, it's a fundamental gem of California. It's like one of those places that if you want to go catch Mackinac and you don't want to go to Lake Tahoe, this is the next best place to go. Some people would argue Caples, but I'm going to talk maybe later about that lake and stuff. But this is like one of the greatest Mackinac lakes in the state. 35-pound max, 30-pound max. They're being caught out of there. I know some guides that are going out there. I would not recommend hiring a guide, spending $500, going up there, having some guide. I already know what they do. I know how they fish. Boring as all boring can get. It's and they generally has struggled to put their clients on anything bigger than 10. So if you go out there and you get a 7 to a 9, it sounds big. But for a lake trout, you're paying a guide. You need to be, the opportunity for 20-pound max needs to be there all day long. And this is one of those lakes where it's a big lake and it gets really windy. So the kind of weather conditions that can kind of pop up out of nowhere. I mean, I can't remember the last trip I went there and I wasn't like, oh, I'm kind of surprised. It was just, slack, no wind at all. And now we got 35-mile-per-hour gusts. Same thing might happen, you might wake up and have 8-mile winds, and then the next thing you know, you got a wind advisory and the 60-mile-per-hour winds are running through. And, it's hard to fish in 60-mile-per-hour winds. I've tried personally, and it's very difficult. The howling of the wind just alone is going to give you a headache and beat you up to the point where you're just going to want to go to bed. So get up there and embrace whatever the conditions are. Embrace them. If the wind wants to blow 20 miles per hour to the east, just understand that everything's setting up for that wind. So every fish is setting up on the structure that they're already on every day, so that as the water comes east way, if it comes in from the east, blowing to the east or whatnot, you're going to understand, okay, I know this fish is in this riprap, but he's going to set up to ambush his food this way. And so if, for example, you're trolling out at if you're going out west trolling and the wind's blowing east, it's a bad idea. If you're trolling, you need to go with the wind. Go with the wind, because bait fish don't go against the wind. Struggling bait fish definitely don't go against the wind. And a lot of times when you get this wind, it's going to push a lot of bait fish and a lot of food in the area the wind's blowing. And this is going to stack fish in that area as long as it's blowing in that particular vicinity. So, this is also another tricky thing where when you wake up, I noticed that the wind kind of goes northwest. And then around 10:30 a.m., it starts to go southeast. And so every day almost, you can guarantee that it's going to blow northwest from, say, I don't know, 8 p.m. or so, all the way till 10 a.m. And then around 10 a.m. it's going to go southeast, and it's going to do that until 7:30, 7 o'clock at night. And then that's that transition where it gets glassy or whatever for an hour and a half, and then the winds start to go the other way. Or, you know, there's, like I said, some variables. Some days you might get a little extra glass-like conditions. But definitely, guys, get out to Union Valley, get on some fish. I'm trying to think of anything else I can do to help you. It's ultra clear water. You're talking clear water, 30 feet visibility. Make sure whatever you're doing, you're going light line, fluorocarbon, and did I mention fluorocarbon? 6 pound, 8 pound. Don't be afraid to go down to 4, but definitely don't go up to 10. Monofilament, great for top water, but yeah, that's all it's great for. You know, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna talk about some of the access points, guys. We're going to talk about how there's the Sunset Peninsula, and every one of these campgrounds has a little group area or a little area that's designated for day use. And the day use went up, and it's $10 now. It used to all be free, and then it was this, and now it's 8, and then it went to 10, and it's just going to keep going up, and they're going to keep raising it. And so, you know, there's lots of areas for you to park and get to the day use. The problem is then from the day use area to just have access points on the lake where you'd actually want to fish. So there's going to be areas, and you're going to say, man, look at that drop off. Look at that. Look at this. Look at this. Those are the highlighted areas that you need to focus on. When you see a flat and it's just a flat, and there's nothing particular, like Camino Cove, for example, has got some areas that are just flat, featureless. They don't have grass. They don't have rock. They kind of don't have much of anything. I wouldn't focus on that. But that's going to be your easiest access. That's going to be the easiest place for you to go fish. And it's going to hold the least amount of fish, giving you the worst opportunity at catching a fish. And then when you look at those really gnarly areas and you say, man, got to be crazy to try to fish off that, that's where they're at. And that's the sad truth. And, you know, everything else, guys, you know, try to be out of the day use before the sun goes down. Sometimes they really, you know, start barking up they really start, you know, just fussing about stuff. So there are some, you know, they want you out of the day use by sunset, which is kind of absurd, but at the same time, they've also kind of made it so that you can't park anywhere and walk to the lake without having to go through an incredible hike, 3, 5, 8 mile hike to get from where you're parked on the road to the lake. So they kind of forced and concentrated people into these day use areas, and then at the same time eliminated everywhere else that they could just free parking, free day use, and they've eliminated that. And their ultimate goal is to eliminate anything that's free. But what's more insane about that is that's a national forest, that's public. It's a public forest, meaning they're imposing all these restrictions and access and fees and day use fees, but they're really messing it up. And from somebody who grew up fishing these areas before all this, I still will never get used to it to my dying day. Like I could, you know, till I'm gone, I'm never going to be able to adjust to the amount of control that's been implemented in this region. It used to be the kind of place where you could just pull over anywhere and camp. You didn't have to ask, you didn't have to worry, you didn't have to have a permit, you didn't have to go through any type of channels. You could just go up there for weeks at a time, a month or months at a time, and do your thing, and you wouldn't come across anybody that would bother you or ask you for a permit or ask you what you're doing in the public national forest. You understand? Now we live in a day and age where everyone's like, what are you doing here? It's like, well, it's a public national forest, and it's, historically been used as this, and still today modernly being used as that. So what do you think I'm doing up here is the real question. And so for you guys out there that are looking for free camping and free areas for day use, I gotta tell you, it's almost non-existent. And the little bit of it that does exist, people are trying to keep their lips sealed, because I can tell you there's works in the way. Certain things are happening, for the past couple years, where I've talked to people and they're talking about, oh yeah, let's take this dirt road and let's pave it. Why would you pave the road? Well, they want to pave it. They're not going to do anything else, but they're going to put campsite numbers, and they've already got, tables that are very old. They've already got, say, picnic benches or fire pits that are 100, 150 years old, and they're just gonna pave a little bit, maybe a couple 100 feet at the most of road, and then all of a sudden now they've justifiably can charge us $38, $45, $50 a night to camp, and they can start charging you extra money for day use and say, well, we gotta pick up garbage, which that's a load of crap. But yeah, guys, if you go up there, you're gonna have to pay to play to get to these access points. And it's not just Union Valley and every other place, it's everywhere in this state of California. Loon Lake, as example, it used to have these wonderful places that all the local people would go camping, and they camped for free, and they were on the lake, and it was pretty awesome. And now all those places, every single one of them, every one of them has been transferred, and they threw a picnic table, or they threw a pit, very basic pit, but these areas already had pits, which I'm not really sure. Yeah, but now they're $50 a night. $50 a night. And that don't include your permit for your fire or what you're using to cook. It's outrageous. Your parents and my parents' parents, they went up there and they did it for free back when America was free. But we're not going to get into how America's not free. We're done with this video. I hope you guys go up there and you catch a bunch of fish and you have great memories with your family and your friends. Enjoy it, guys, because what's left of it is disappearing faster than any of us would have imagined. In the end of my lifetime, the things that I'm talking about, the things that you can go up there and see right now, will be gone completely. It'll be eradicated. And all that will be left is a national public forest that was initially intended for people to go that weren't rich and camp without spending an arm and a leg, but not having all these luxuries and comforts. Now you're paying big bucks to go up and enjoy the same thing, but not nearly as awesome as your ancestors and your father and his father. But you're paying big money, and get what you can while you can. Ain't much left, but go up there and enjoy the beauty, because they're going to continue to take away the forest that we love so much, modify your access points, change your campgrounds, not do a whole lot, but they have to find a way to justify, how can we get $75 a night for them to camp there? Let's make it $100. And, at that point, who can afford to go camping? And at that point, we all lose. And the only people that benefit are who? Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry if it kind of went into a few other things. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to talk about some other lakes. I'm going to break down some other bodies of water. And I can only tell you what I know, guys. So I'll tell you what I can and help you to the fullest of my ability, and wish you the best. Stay tuned. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and definitely subscribe and stay tuned for more.